Alien CEO secretly follows single human dad working double shifts. What she sees leaves her. Lisa Torvin, chief executive of Stellaris Megacorp on Arcturus Station, scrutinized personnel files with her silver eyes. One record gnawed at her. Daniel Archer, a human with flawless shifts, zero infractions, and minimal social ties. Too perfect, she murmured, her sensory tendrils twitching. Computer, show surveillance from Cargo Bay 7. The screen displayed a muscular human loading freight with mechanical precision, sweat gleaming on his dark hair. But it was the quiet determination in his forest green eyes that intrigued her. Exhaustion masked by purpose. "He's hiding something," she declared. Ignoring her assistant's reminder of the Proxima delegation, she rescheduled, donned civilian clothes, and tailed Archer from the employee exit at 1900 hours. He boarded transit to the outer rings, clutching a large container, heading into the rundown Crimson District, home to Kessler conflict refugees. Lisa shadowed him through crumbling alleys to a narrow corridor. Peering around the corner, she froze. A cluster of malnourished Etherian children, their violet skin faded and tendrils limp, burst from scrap shelters, faces alight. "Mr. Daniel," they chorused, swarming him. Kneeling, Archer opened the container. Food packs, nutrient drinks, medical supplies. "One at a time, enough for all," he said softly, distributing shares with care. He knew their names, checked on ailments like Mira's infected tendril, and listened to their tales. Shame twisted in Lisa's twin hearts. Her corporation paid fair wages, yet this worker funneled his earnings to feed alien orphans. When a toddler stumbled, Archer caught him tenderly. "Easy, buddy." As Archer spun a story, animating his weary face, Lissa resolved she would aid these children and uncover what made this compassionate human unique. Lissa tossed in her penthouse that night, haunted by Archer's image amid the adoring children. Pacing, she summoned his file. Human, 34, Earthborn, 4 years exemplary service, no family, no contacts. Isolation intrigued her. By dawn, she funneled funds anonymously via Zax, her reptilian aide, for Crimson deliveries post-Archer's visits, reinforced shelters, bedding, balanced rations. A week later, disguised, she trailed him. The children glowed healthier, tendrils vibrant, the shelter now insulated and secure. Archer knelt amid them, baffled yet hopeful. "Not star spirits, someone real," he told Mira, eyes scanning intently. They locked on her shadow. Thrill surged through her twin hearts. Next day, she summoned him. In his mended best, he met her gaze steadily. "Why no advancement?" she probed, circling close. "Suits my needs," he replied, jaw tight. She granted 20% raise, retroactive. Calculation flickered in his eyes, not thanks. His earthy scent stirred her unexpectedly as she dismissed him, then upped surveillance. That evening, feeds showed him warning the eldest boy, "Someone's watching. Nothing free has no price." Lissa ached at the cynicism, escalating gifts, nutrition, books, toys. 2 weeks on, alarms blared. Archer infiltrated archives at 2 a.m., stealthily probing terminals for his benefactor. Lisa smiled at the hunt. Smiled. The security system bathed the archives in soft amber glow as Daniel moved between terminals, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with surprising dexterity. He'd almost accessed the financial records when the lights suddenly brightened to full intensity. "Impressive," came a familiar voice from behind him. "Most humans can't bypass our biometric scanners." Daniel froze, then slowly turned to face Lisa Torvin. She stood in the doorway wearing a simple silver robe that accentuated the luminescent violet of her skin. Her sensory tendrils were fully extended, a sign of heightened alertness among Etherians. "Ms. Torvin," he acknowledged, straightening to his full height. No point denying what he was doing. "Breaking into corporate archives carries a minimum 7-year sentence on Arcturus Station," she said, moving closer. Care to explain yourself, Mr. Archer? His jaw tightened. Someone's been interfering with my kids in Crimson District. I needed to know who and why. Your kids? Her tendrils twitched with interest. They're Etherian orphans. Species doesn't matter. They're mine now. The fierce protectiveness in his voice sent an unexpected shiver through Lissa's nervous system. She circled him slowly, noting how his eyes tracked her movement with the wariness of a cornered predator. And you suspected corporate involvement? The supplies weren't random. Too targeted. Someone knew exactly what we needed. His gaze narrowed. Someone who's been watching us. Lisa stopped directly before him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his human body. And if I told you I was that someone? The surprise that flashed across his face was quickly replaced by suspicion. Why would the CEO of Stellaris Megacorp care about street orphans? Perhaps for the same reason a human cargo handler would spend his earnings feeding alien children. She tilted her head. You intrigue me, Daniel Archer. I'm not interesting, he countered. I just do what needs doing. That's precisely what makes you interesting. She moved closer still, noting how he held his ground despite their proximity. Humans are a contradiction. Your species is considered primitive by Galactic Council standards, yet you display qualities my kind have all but forgotten. His scent enveloped her, that earthy, distinctly human aroma that triggered responses in her biology she'd never experienced with males of her own species. What qualities? He asked, his voice dropping to a lower register. Compassion without calculation, generosity without agenda. She reached out, her violet fingers hovering just above his chest. It's fascinating. The tension between them shifted, electric and dangerous. Daniel's breathing had changed, becoming deeper, and Lisa found her own respiratory system synchronizing with his. So you've been following me? He said, watching me. Interfering. Helping, she corrected. Those children needed more than one human could provide, no matter how dedicated. Why the secrecy? Why not approach me directly? Lisa's tendrils curled slightly, a gesture of amusement. Would you have accepted help from the corporate executive you probably despise? A reluctant smile tugged at his lips. Probably not. Exactly. She finally allowed her fingers to make contact with his chest, feeling the solid warmth beneath the thin fabric of his shirt. The touch seemed to break something in him. His hand moved with surprising speed, capturing her wrist, not roughly, but firmly. What do you want from me, Lissa? The use of her first name without title or formality sent another pleasurable shock through her system. I want to understand what drives you, she admitted. No one does something for nothing. His laugh was short and bitter. That's where you're wrong. Some things are done simply because they're right. The concept was so foreign to her cultural understanding that she found herself momentarily speechless. In Etherian society, all interactions were carefully calculated exchanges of value. The idea of acting without expectation of return was revolutionary. Daniel released her wrist but didn't step back. So what happens now? Am I fired? Arrested? Neither, she said, making a decision. I have a proposition. His eyebrow raised. I'm listening. Work with me. Officially, help me create a proper program for those children and others like them. She moved even closer, their bodies nearly touching. Your compassion, my resources. Think what we could accomplish. The air between them seemed to vibrate with possibility and something more primal. His eyes dropped briefly to her lips, then back to her eyes. And what do you get out of this arrangement? He asked, voice husky. The satisfaction of doing what's right, she replied, deliberately using his own logic. And perhaps a chance to explore these fascinating human contradictions more thoroughly. The invitation in her words was unmistakable. For a moment, neither moved. Then Daniel's hand came up to trace the contour of her face, his touch sending cascades of sensation through nerve endings evolved for entirely different species contact. "This is a terrible idea," he murmured, even as he leaned closer. "Probably," she agreed, her tendrils curling toward him in the Etherean gesture of intimate interest. "Most revolutionary ideas are—" When their lips finally met, the biochemical reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Etherians didn't kiss. The concept was uniquely human. But Lysa found herself responding instinctively, her body recognizing something her conscious mind couldn't have anticipated. The archives, with their sterile environment and security monitors, faded from awareness as they surrendered to an attraction that defied both corporate hierarchy and interspecies convention. Hours later, as they lay entwined in the privacy of her executive suite, Lisa traced the unfamiliar contours of his human form with wondering fingers. "You realize this complicates everything," Daniel said, his voice a rumble against her skin. "Complexity is the foundation of progress," she replied, resting her head against his chest to hear the fascinating rhythm of his single heart. "And I've never been afraid of progress." The morning light filtered through the polarized windows of Lysa's executive suite, casting geometric patterns across the rumpled bedding. Daniel sat at the edge, pulling on his boots, his back a landscape of lean muscle that Lysa found herself wanting to memorize. "You're staring," he said without turning. "Etherians consider intense observation a compliment," she replied, her tendrils curling with amusement. "Though I suspect humans feel differently." He glanced over his shoulder, a half smile playing on his lips. "Depends who's doing the observing." The easy intimacy between them felt both natural and impossible, a contradiction that seemed to define everything about their relationship. "I need to tell you something," Daniel said, his expression growing serious, "about why I'm really on Arcturus Station." Lisa sat up, the sheets falling away from her violet-hued form. "I assumed employment opportunities, partially." He turned fully toward her, forest green eyes clouded with memory. "4 years ago on Earth, I had a family. A wife, Emma, a daughter, Sophie. We lived near the manufacturing complex of Helix Industries." Something in his tone made Lissa's twin hearts stutter. "Had. There was an accident, chemical leak. The official report called it containment failure due to unforeseen circumstances." Bitterness edged his words. 27 people died, including Emma and Sophie. They were just gone, while I was at work. Lisa moved beside him, her hand finding his. "Daniel, the company paid settlements, avoided prosecution, business as usual." His fingers tightened around hers. "I tracked the supply chain, followed the money. It led here, to Arcturus Station, to a subsidiary that provided substandard containment materials to save costs." A cold realization washed over her. A subsidiary of Stellaris Megacorp? He nodded once. "Arcturus Technical Materials. I came here to find proof, to expose what happened." "And instead you found orphans who needed you," she finished softly. "They reminded me of Sophie." Different species, but the same innocence. He looked directly into her eyes. "I never expected to find you, either." Before Lisa could respond, her communication terminal chimed urgently. "Priority message from Director Vrax," announced the automated system. "Display," she commanded. The stern face of her chief financial officer materialized above the terminal. "Ms. Torvin, the board has called an emergency session at 0900 hours. Your presence is mandatory." His eyes flicked briefly to Daniel before returning to her. It concerns unauthorized financial activities and inappropriate fraternization. The message ended abruptly. Well, Lissa said, her voice carefully controlled, it appears our relationship has been noticed. Daniel stood, fully dressed now. Will they fire you? Unlikely. The corporation bears my family name. Her tendrils straightened, a sign of determination. But they can make things difficult. Very difficult. I should go. He moved toward the door. No. Her voice stopped him. We face this together. But first, I need to show you something. 30 minutes later, they stood in Lissa's private office as she accessed a secure database. After our encounter last night, I initiated an investigation into Arcturus technical materials. She brought up a series of documents. The subsidiary was acquired during my father's tenure. I had no direct knowledge of its operations. Daniel studied the scrolling information. But now you do. Yes. She highlighted several sections. The materials were indeed substandard. Corners were cut. Profits were prioritized over safety. Her tendrils drooped with genuine regret. Your family died because of my corporation's negligence. He absorbed this in silence, his face unreadable. There's more, she continued, bringing up another file. While investigating Arcturus Tech, I discovered unusual payment patterns in Crimson District. Large sums moving through shell companies, ultimately traced to several high-ranking Etherian officials. What kind of payments? He asked. Bribes, I believe, connected to what appears to be systematic child trafficking. Daniel's expression hardened. The orphans? Not random orphans, Lisa confirmed. Deliberately created ones. Children separated from families, documents destroyed, then filtered into various markets. His fists clenched. And these officials are connected to your board? 3 of them, including Director Vrax. She closed the files. I believe they discovered my interest in Crimson District and are moving to neutralize me before I uncover their operation. The board meeting is a trap. Then we don't go, Daniel concluded. No. Her tendrils straightened with resolve. We go. But on our terms, with evidence that will destroy them. She touched his arm. I'm sorry about your family, Daniel. I can't undo what happened, but I can help you expose the truth and stop what's happening to these children. He studied her for a long moment. Why would you risk everything for this? For me? Because you showed me what it means to do something simply because it's right. She moved closer, her hand finding his face. My species prides itself on evolutionary superiority, yet you humans possess something we've lost, an innate moral compass that doesn't require calculation. The tenderness in her touch contrasted with the steel in her voice as she added, and because these corrupt bastards have operated under my family's name long enough. Daniel's laugh was unexpected. You know, for an alien, you're starting to sound remarkably human. I'll take that as the highest compliment, she replied, her tendrils curling toward him affectionately. Their lips met briefly, a moment of connection before the storm they both knew was coming. So what's the plan? Daniel asked as they separated. Lisa's expression turned predatory in a distinctly Etherian way. We give the board exactly what they don't expect, the truth, delivered with uniquely human directness. And the children? We'll need evidence of the trafficking operation, concrete proof we can take to the Galactic Council if necessary. She accessed her terminal again. I've been monitoring unusual transport patterns in Crimson District. Tonight appears to be a major movement. Daniel nodded, his face set with determination. Then tonight we'll be there. The boardroom of Stellaris Megacorp gleamed with polished surfaces and subtle displays of wealth. 7 Etherian directors sat around the oval table, their tendrils positioned to convey various degrees of hostility and judgment as Lissa entered. Director Vrax, a tall Etherian with unusually dark violet skin, spoke first. Ms. Torvin, thank you for joining us. We have serious concerns about recent irregularities. Lysa took her position at the head of the table, her posture deliberately relaxed. By irregularities, I assume you mean my personal financial activities and private relationships? Among other things, interjected Director Mella, her tendrils flicking with false sympathy. Your father built this corporation on principles of profit maximization and strategic growth. Your recent humanitarian interests seem at odds with those principles. And your relationship with a human laborer is beneath your station, added Director Tor. Interspecies dalliances are one thing, but a permanent employee? The optics are concerning. Lysa studied each face, mentally cataloging who seemed genuinely outraged versus those showing calculated opposition. 3 of them, Vrax, Mella, and Tor, were directly implicated in the trafficking operation, according to her investigation. I wasn't aware my personal life required board approval, she replied coolly. As for my financial activities, my personal accounts are separate from corporate holdings. Not when they affect corporate reputation, Vrax countered. Your charity work in Crimson District has drawn unwanted attention to areas better left unexamined. The threat in his words was barely veiled. Interesting choice of phrase, Lisa said, activating her personal datapad. Perhaps we should discuss exactly what activities in Crimson District might damage our corporate reputation. She projected a series of financial transactions onto the main display. These payments, for instance, routed through 19 shell companies before reaching accounts controlled by directors Vrax, Mila, and Tor. The boardroom erupted in chaos as the accused directors shouted denials while others demanded explanations. Lissa let the storm rage, watching the factions form exactly as she'd anticipated. Meanwhile, across the city in Crimson District, Daniel moved silently through shadow-draped alleys. The microtransmitter in his ear carried Lysa's voice from the boardroom, while his wrist device recorded everything he witnessed. I'm approaching the warehouse, he whispered, knowing the subvocal microphone would pick up his words. Security looks heavier than expected. 6 armed Etherians guarded a nondescript building, their weapons not the standard issue of corporate security, but military-grade plasma rifles. Through a gap in the loading bay doors, Daniel glimpsed movement inside, small violet forms being herded into transport containers. They're moving the children now, he reported. Looks like at least 30, maybe more. In the boardroom, Lissa received his transmission through her discreet earpiece, while maintaining her confrontation with the board. These transactions coincide with disappearances of children in Crimson District, she continued, displaying more data. Children who mysteriously become orphans before entering various distribution channels. This is absurd, Vrax snarled, his tendrils rigid with anger. You have no proof these payments are connected to any illegal activity. Perhaps not yet, Lissa conceded, but the Galactic Council's anti-trafficking unit might find the correlation interesting enough to launch a full investigation. Director Tor, who had remained silent until now, suddenly stood. This meeting is a waste of time. I move to temporarily suspend Ms. Torvin's executive privileges pending a full audit of her activities. I second, Mella added quickly. Lisa had expected this maneuver. What she hadn't expected was the urgent whisper in her ear. Lisa, I've been spotted. Security's closing in. There are more children than we thought, and Daniel's transmission cut off abruptly. Her primary heart seemed to freeze while her secondary one raced. She couldn't abandon the boardroom confrontation. It was their best chance to expose the operation, but Daniel was in immediate danger. "Before we vote," she said, forcing her voice to remain steady, "you should know that evidence is being gathered at this very moment. Evidence that will be automatically transmitted to authorities if anything happens to me or my associate." It was a bluff, but one she delivered with perfect conviction. "What associate?" Vrax demanded. As if in answer, the boardroom display suddenly changed, showing a live feed from Daniel's recording device. The image was chaotic. Clearly he was running, being pursued, but it clearly showed children being loaded into containers. "What is this?" gasped one of the uninvolved directors. "This," Lisa said grimly, "is what certain board members have been hiding in Crimson District." The feed abruptly cut out, but not before capturing a clear image of a transport container bearing the discreet logo of a Stellaris Holdings subsidiary. The boardroom exploded into accusations and denials. In the confusion, Lisa slipped away, activating her emergency protocols as she moved. "Security override, Torvin Alpha," she commanded her wrist device. "Track Daniel Archer's transmitter and dispatch corporate security team to that location. Authorization for defensive force approved." Her personal transport was waiting, its engine humming to life as she approached. "Crimson District Warehouse Sector," she ordered the automated system. "Maximum speed." As the vehicle accelerated into the sky lanes, Lisa accessed the corporate security network. Daniel's transmitter showed him still moving, which gave her hope, but the signal was weak. The journey to Crimson District took 14 excruciating minutes. Each second stretched her nerves tighter as she imagined what might be happening to Daniel and to the children he'd tried to save. When her transport finally descended near the warehouse, she found chaos. Corporate security had arrived and engaged with the traffickers. Plasma fire illuminated the night in strobing flashes of amber and violet. Lessa spotted a familiar figure crouched behind a cargo container, a small Etherian child clutched protectively against his chest. Even from a distance, she could see blood staining his shirt. "Daniel!" she called, rushing toward him despite the danger. He looked up, relief washing over his face. "Lisa, they were ready for us. This isn't just trafficking, it's bigger. I found documentation linking this operation to the Orion Syndicate. The Orion Syndicate, the most notorious criminal organization in the sector, with tentacles reaching into governments across multiple systems." "You're hurt," she said, noticing the wound on his shoulder. "I'll live." His eyes met hers with an intensity that made her tendrils quiver. "But we've stumbled into something much more dangerous than corporate corruption." The child in his arms whimpered, and he automatically soothed her with a gentle touch that made Lisa's heart constrict with emotion. "We need to get you both to safety," she said, helping him to his feet. "Not just us." He nodded toward the warehouse. "There are at least 40 more children inside, and I saw something else. Data terminals with information that could expose the entire network." A decision crystallized in Lisa's mind. "My security team can handle the immediate threat, but we need that evidence." Daniel nodded, understanding her intent without words. "Together, then." As they prepared to make their move, Lisa found herself struck by the human's unflinching courage. Despite being injured, despite being a single individual against a criminal syndicate, he never considered abandoning the children. "You humans are remarkable creatures," she said softly. His smile was tight but genuine. "We're stubborn that way." "It's one of your better qualities," she replied, her hand finding his for a brief, affirming squeeze. Around them, the battle continued to rage. But in that moment, something profound and unshakable solidified between them. a bond forged in shared purpose and growing affection that neither corporate politics nor interstellar crime syndicates could sever. Plasma fire ricocheted off the metal container as Lysa and Daniel crouched behind it, the small Etherian child trembling between them. "Stay here," Daniel told the girl, his voice gentle despite the chaos. "We'll come back for you." Lisa activated her wrist device, creating a small protective energy field around the container. This will keep her safe temporarily. They moved in tandem toward the warehouse entrance, ducking between shadows as the firefight between corporate security and the traffickers intensified. Daniel winced as movement aggravated his shoulder wound, but his determination never wavered. "The main terminal should be in the administrative section," he said, "northwest corner based on the building schematics." They'd almost reached the entrance when a familiar voice called out from behind them. "How disappointing, Ms. Torvin." They turned to find Director Vrax standing with 6 heavily armed guards, their weapons trained on Lisa and Daniel. "I expected better from a Torvin," Vrax continued, his tendrils rigid with cold fury. "Your father understood the value of profitable arrangements. He would never have jeopardized everything for sentiment." "My father didn't traffic children," Lysa spat. Vrax's mouth twisted in what passed for an Etherian smile. "Your father understood necessary compromises. The Orion Syndicate provides protection and market access that has made our shareholders very wealthy. The occasional resource allocation is a small price." "Resource allocation?" Daniel stepped forward, rage evident in every line of his body. "They're children, you sick bastard." One of the guards struck him with the butt of a rifle, sending him to his knees. Lisa moved instinctively to his side, her tendrils flaring with protective fury. "Humans," Vrax sighed, "so emotional, so limited in their understanding of galactic economics." "I understand enough," Daniel growled, blood trickling from his lip as he rose again. "I understand that creatures like you exist across the universe, putting profit above lives." "The same profit that built the corporation you work for," Vrax countered. "The same profit that pays your wages." "Not anymore," Lisa interjected. "As of this moment, I'm invoking Founder's Protocol. As the last Torvin, I'm dissolving the current board and assuming direct control of all corporate assets." Vrax's tendrils twisted with alarm. "You can't do that without evidence of criminal activity by board members." Lysa nodded toward the warehouse. "I have that evidence, and we're about to get more. You'll never make it inside," Vrax sneered. "And even if you did, the Syndicate's reach extends to the highest levels of the Galactic Council. There's nowhere you can take this evidence that will matter." A sudden explosion rocked the warehouse, sending everyone staggering. In the confusion, Daniel grabbed Lisa and pulled her through the now breached entrance. "Now or never," he said, his eyes reflecting the fires burning around them. They raced through the chaotic interior, past crates of frightened children and battling security forces. In the northwest corner, they found the administrative office and the data terminal Daniel had spotted earlier. "Cover me," he said, sliding behind the console. Lisa took a position at the door, her corporate security clearance giving her access to a weapon locker on the wall. Armed with a plasma pistol, she fired precise shots at traffickers attempting to reach the office. "Hurry," she called. "Vrax will have reinforcements coming." "Almost there," Daniel replied, his fingers flying across the interface. "This is bigger than we thought, Lisa. The Syndicate has infiltrated governments across 4 sectors. There are facilities like this on 15 different worlds. Can you download it all?" "Already done." He held up a data crystal. "Everything we need to burn their operation to the ground." A new barrage of weapons fire forced Lisa to duck. "We need to move. Get the children out." "There's a transport bay on the east side," Daniel said, consulting the terminal. If we can get the kids there. The ceiling above them groaned ominously as structural supports weakened by the fighting began to fail. This place is coming down, Lissa realized. We need to evacuate now. Working together, they began gathering children from their containers, guiding them toward the transport bay. Daniel moved with the efficiency of someone accustomed to crisis, his calm voice reassuring the terrified youngsters. Stay together. Hold hands. Follow Ms. Torvin. They'd almost reached the transport bay when Vrax appeared with his guards, blocking their path. Enough of this, the director snarled. The evidence stays here, along with all of you. Before either could respond, the building shuddered violently. A support beam crashed down, narrowly missing the children but separating Lisa and Daniel from Vrax. Go! Daniel shouted to Lisa. Get the kids out. I'll handle Vrax. I'm not leaving you, she insisted. Trust me. His eyes held hers for a moment that seemed to stretch into infinity. I'll find you. Another section of ceiling collapsed, forcing her decision. Gathering the children, Lisa led them to the waiting transport as Daniel disappeared into the smoke toward Vrax. The journey to Lissa's secure residence was tense, her thoughts constantly returning to Daniel. Had he escaped? Was he hurt? The data crystal felt heavy in her pocket, evidence that could bring down an interstellar criminal network, but worthless to her if Daniel didn't return. Hours later, with the children safely settled in her home's guest quarters under security protection, Lisa paced her living room. No word from Daniel, no sign of pursuit. The uncertainty was unbearable. A soft alert from her security system broke the silence. Perimeter breach detected, the automated voice announced. Unknown device attached to primary transport. A tracking device. They'd been followed. Lissa's tactical training kicked in. She activated the residence's defensive systems, moved the children to the secure core, and prepared for the inevitable assault. As she checked the weapon she'd brought from the warehouse, her communication device chimed with an incoming message. The text was simple. Evidence uploaded to all major news networks across 4 sectors. Too big to cover up now. Coming to you. Hold on. D. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by renewed tension. Daniel was alive, but the syndicate would be desperate now that their operation was exposed. They'd come for the witnesses, for the children, and for the human who had ruined them. As if on cue, her security system detected multiple approaching vehicles. Lisa positioned herself at the main entrance, weapon ready. She thought of the children sleeping in her secure room, of the evidence now spreading across the galaxy, of the human who had changed everything with his simple, powerful conviction that doing the right thing needed no justification beyond itself. For the first time in her life, Lassa Torvin found herself praying, not to any deity, but to the universe itself, that a single remarkable human would find his way back to her before the coming storm broke. The first explosion hit the eastern perimeter of Lissa's residence, rattling windows and triggering emergency containment fields. Through security feeds, she counted 8 assault vehicles surrounding the property, disgorging armed syndicate operatives in black tactical gear. Defensive Protocol Omega, she commanded the house system. Prioritize core protection. Lisa moved efficiently, checking her weapon and the residence's defensive capabilities. The children were secure in the central bunker, but the attacking force was larger than anticipated. She needed more time. A proximity alert chimed, but instead of another threat, the screen showed a battered transport approaching from the south, flying erratically but somehow evading syndicate detection. Daniel. He landed on the auxiliary pad, stumbling from the transport with torn clothing and fresh bruises, but very much alive. Lisa rushed to the secure entrance, relief flooding her system as the door slid open to reveal him. "You're late," she said, tendrils quivering with emotions she couldn't fully express. "Traffic was hell," he replied with that uniquely human ability to joke in the face of danger. Then, more seriously, "Vrax didn't make it. Building collapse. But I got this." He held up a second data crystal. His personal records, names of every syndicate contact in the Galactic Council. Another explosion rocked the building, closer this time. "They're breaching the west entrance," Lissa reported, pulling him inside. "Syndicate strike team, at least 25 operatives." Daniel checked the weapon he'd acquired somewhere between the warehouse and her home. "The evidence is public now. Every news outlet across 4 sectors is running it. The syndicate can't stop the information. But they can eliminate witnesses," she finished. "The children are their primary target. Along with us." They moved to the central security station where Lissa brought up a tactical display. "My security systems can hold them off temporarily, but we need reinforcements." "Already incoming," Daniel said. "I contacted the Galactic Council's Special Response Division before coming here. Used Vrax's authentication codes to verify the evidence. They dispatched forces immediately, but they're still 25 minutes out. We need to hold for 25 minutes against a syndicate kill team," Lissa summarized, her tendrils straightening with determination. "Acceptable odds." Daniel's laugh was warm despite the circumstances. "I love how you calculate everything." The casual admission of love hung between them for a heartbeat before another explosion demanded their attention. "West barrier compromised," the house system announced. "Hostiles entering level 1. They moved in perfect coordination, Lysa activating internal defense systems while Daniel established a defensive position covering the approach to the core where the children sheltered. "You know," Daniel said as they prepared for the assault, "this isn't how I imagined our third date would go." Despite everything, Lisa felt her tendrils curl with amusement. "You've been counting our encounters as dates?" The warehouse raid was definitely a date by human standards. Very romantic. Explosions, gunfire, daring rescue. The first syndicate operatives appeared at the end of the corridor, and both Lysa and Daniel opened fire simultaneously. The precision of their coordination was remarkable, as if they'd fought together for years rather than hours. "If we survive this," Lysa said between bursts of plasma fire, "I'll show you how Etherians conduct proper courtship rituals." "Looking forward to it," Daniel replied, taking down another operative with a well-placed shot. "Though, I should warn you, I'm already pretty committed to this relationship." The fighting intensified as more syndicate forces breached the residence. Lisa and Daniel were forced to fall back to secondary positions, trading space for time as they protected the approach to the children. 10 minutes until council forces arrive," Daniel announced, checking his communicator during a brief lull. Lissa winced as plasma fire grazed her arm. "We may not have 10 minutes." The syndicate forces had adapted to the residence's defenses, using specialized equipment to bypass security measures. They were professionals, methodical in their approach. "I have an idea," Daniel said suddenly. "The environmental systems, can you flood the lower levels with cryogenic coolant?" Lisa's tendrils perked up as she grasped his plan. "Yes, but we'd lose most of the house systems." "Better than losing the children," he countered. She nodded, accessing the environmental controls. "Initiating emergency purge. Brace yourself." A harsh alarm sounded throughout the residence, followed by the hiss of supercooled gas flooding the lower levels. The temperature plummeted instantly, freezing the advancing syndicate operatives in place. In the sudden silence that followed, Daniel and Lissa shared a look of exhausted triumph. Council forces approaching, the house system announced. ETA 2 minutes. Daniel slumped against the wall, the adrenaline drain making his injuries more apparent. Lisa moved to him, her fingers gentle as she examined his wounds. "You need medical attention," she said. "I need you," he replied simply, his hand finding hers. "Everything else can wait." The raw honesty in his voice touched something deep within her, something that had been awakening since that first night she followed him to Crimson District. When the Galactic Council forces finally arrived, they found Lysa and Daniel still in that position, hands intertwined, keeping watch over the children they had saved. 3 months later, Lysa stood on the observation deck of Torvin Tower, watching the sunset paint Arcturus Station's skyline in shades of amber and gold. The door slid open behind her, and she knew without turning who had entered. "The council's final verdict came through," Daniel said, joining her at the window. 43 syndicate officials convicted, 15 corrupt council members removed, the trafficking network dismantled across all 4 sectors. "And the children?" she asked. His smile was warm, crinkling the corners of his eyes in the way that made her tendrils curl with affection. "The New Horizons Foundation has been officially recognized. Full funding approved. The first residential facility opens next month." Lisa turned to face him fully. In the 3 months since the syndicate attack, Daniel had transformed from a cargo handler to the director of human Etherian relations for the restructured Stellaris Megacorp. The position suited him, his natural compassion balanced with steel-hard determination to protect the vulnerable. "Your idea to redirect 20% of corporate profits to rehabilitation programs was inspired," she said. "The board actually approved it without argument." "Amazing what a complete replacement of corrupt directors can accomplish," he replied with a wry smile. Lisa moved closer, her fingers tracing the now healed scar on his shoulder. "Have I mentioned today how remarkable you humans are?" "Only twice," he said, drawing her against him. "Your fascination with my species is showing, Ms. Torvin." "Not the species," she corrected, "just one particular specimen." Their lips met in what had become a familiar ritual, the biochemical reaction no less potent for its repetition. When they separated, Daniel's expression had turned serious. "I've been thinking about what you said, about doing the right thing without calculation." He took a small box from his pocket. "This is probably terrible timing by Etherian standards, but humans tend to follow their hearts rather than their schedules." Inside the box was a ring, a simple band of iridescent metal that caught the light like Etherian skin. "On Earth, this symbolizes a permanent partnership," he explained. "I know interspecies marriages are rare, and there would be complications, but—" Lisa silenced him with another kiss, her tendrils fully extended in the Etherian expression of joy. "Yes," she said simply when they parted. Later that night, as they lay together in the privacy of their shared quarters, Lisa reflected on the strange path that had led them to this moment. How a simple decision to follow a mysterious employee had changed not just her life, but the lives of countless children across 4 sectors. "What are you thinking?" Daniel asked, his fingers tracing patterns on her luminescent skin. "That sometimes the most revolutionary act is simply to care," she replied. "You taught me that. And you taught me that one person really can change an entire system," he said, "even if that person is an intimidatingly beautiful alien CEO." Lysa laughed, the sound mingling with his in the darkness. Outside their window, Arcturus Station continued its eternal orbit. But within the walls they had built together, something new and unprecedented had taken root. A bridge between worlds that began with curiosity and blossomed into love. And in the secure wing of their residence, 38 former orphans slept peacefully, their futures now as bright as the stars visible through the viewport. All because a human man had worked consecutive shifts to feed alien children, and an alien woman had decided to follow him into the darkness and found light instead.